Hi, gun people. So this is the BCA is a Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. I'm not sure what their role is. I don't know Minnesota and how they do it. I don't know if this guy's law enforcement or if he's an attorney. But he's with the BCA doing the primary interview. And I think this guy's with the FBI, and I forgot where this guy's at. But this is the officer that was standing over Floyd with Floyd to his back while they were kneeling on him, and he was keeping the people back. So that's this officer right here. And this is his attorney. And they're going to do an interview. And I'm going to go over his statement on things he's saying, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm going to go maybe what he should elaborate on or where he's trying to go and what he's trying to get by the questions he's asking him. Now, I don't know if this guy knows by the questions he's asking where he's leading him. He seems like a pretty experienced officer on the scene. He was probably the second most experienced. I think he'd been a cop for 3 or 5 years, something like that. And the first part of this video, they just kind of go about the niceties, how you doing, explain were you on uniform, were you on duty. Then they get into a statement. So I'm going to go from a statement on, and we'll talk about why they're doing this. Now, this attorney agreed to have him do this. And his attorney agreed to have him do this because the attorney's like, we ain't got nothing to hide. He didn't do anything. And if you try and charge him, you're crazy. So, you know, this is when attorneys will let you talk, when they know you're absolutely innocent and you can't say anything that's incriminating. This guy kind of didn't do anything incriminating. I mean, they're going to say, and they kind of get into the middle of this interview kind of like, you know, why didn't you say something, and why didn't you, and I'll explain all that on where they're going and where I think they're going and kind of give you the cop lingo here. But this guy gets interviewed by 3 cops or an attorney and 2 cops, and this guy's the primary interviewer here. So these other 2 guys don't say too much. From what I saw, I only watched it to about 55 minutes. So this may be a couple of, the whole interview is an hour and 40 minutes. If you want to go watch it, you go to this channel. It's up there. Knock yourself out. But I'm going to be pausing, and I'm going to be evaluating and telling you why, what he says, how he says it, how it's good, bad, and different. All right, here we go. Okay, I'm thinking this guy may not be an attorney because I think that's a set of cuffs, and I think I might have saw a gun on his side. So right here, I think he's wearing a gun, but I'm not sure. I don't know if y'all saw that or not. Is that a gun right there? It looks like a gun to me. And I left closed captioning on because it's kind of hard to see. Even though closed captioning is off, there ain't no music, and it pops up. So here we go. Okay, at this point in the interview, they're talking about whether he was in a marked unit. They lock him down that he's wearing a uniform. He's plainly marked. Everybody knew he was a cop, and he was a cop. They also kind of get to the point that he was the senior, one of the senior officers there. There was 2 other guys. One guy was off FTO, I think 2 days, and the other guy was off FTO for maybe 2 weeks. So they're what commonly referred to as a rookie because they just graduated academy, then they go through a few months of FTO, and then they get on their own. So the 2 younger guys that they arrested really have almost 0 experience. Now remember, senior officer with more experience can do more, can articulate more, can take more action because he has more to back it up. So younger officers can't do it. A young officer writing a search warrant can't say that I've done, 15 prior search warrants and that I've arrested approximately 30 people for drugs. And I've assisted other officers in 30 or 50 search warrants. So the longer you're on a department, the more you can say why your opinion should be believed and held more. When you're young, you don't have a whole bunch of experience to back you up. All you have is your academy.
What's like the color signature on it?
Black and white with police shield.
Okay, where's the police shield?
On the doors.
All right. Do you have a light bar exposed or hidden, or
light bar?
Light bar.
I have this at 125.
Is there a recording device, recording system in the squad car?
It was a MVR.
MVR. Okay, and what is an MVR?
It's basically the camera for the squad.
Okay.
That faces forward.
Okay. Do you know if the MVR was activated during this incident we're here talking about?
I activated when we started out code 3 run.
Okay.
And then once it was deemed dispatched, it was or squad 320 call that their co-fuller who slowed down. I turned off the light and turned off the squad video.
Okay, so when you say code 3,
meaning lights and sirens, emergency.
Does the camera automatically turn on, or do you manually turn that on?
Automatically should turn on.
Okay, and then when you down.
Okay, so I'm not sure if this cop is just asking these questions because he really doesn't know, or because he's trying to get it on the record to have this guy explain this. Now, the way he was asking questions, that's why I didn't know he was a cop or an attorney, because he's asking pretty good questions. He's a pretty good interviewer, and he's locking this guy down in a lot of things.
Downgrade, does it turn off automatically, or you manually?
I manually turn it off.
Okay, understand. Have you watched that video at all?
No.
So is that, you turned that off before you got to the scene? Is that how I'm understanding it?
Correct.
Okay, so it would just show you driving fast for a little bit, and then, okay, understood.
This attorney doesn't really say much, but when he does say something, he's absolutely correct. And he kind of gets this guy to change his question. But we'll get to that.
All right. That day when this incident happened, prior to the call that you went to assist at 30th in Chicago.
The call is George Floyd call.
Do you have any recollection approximately how many calls you had been on prior to that? Rough estimate?
I would say 3, possibly 4. I don't recall offhand.
Do you remember?
So they have all this information. You're going to notice a lot of things they're asking, they already know the answers. They know how many calls he went to. They pulled his call log. They know what car he was driving. They probably have pictures of the car. They know what his uniform was. They got a damn video of him in uniform. So a lot of the questions he's asking is he's getting this guy comfortable talking about things that can't hurt him, and then he's going to try to get him to say things that can hurt him or can hurt the other officers so they can use his testimony against the other officers.
Any of those calls?
I remember the last one.
What was that?
Which was a domestic with a custody, parental custody domestic. We spent a couple hours doing that.
Okay. Was there an arrest made or anything significant about that call?
No.
Okay.
I think the reason why he's asking this is so the officer can't say, it was a really busy day. You know, you get on the stand and the defense attorney or his attorney ask him, officer, that day, do you remember how many calls you went to? No, I don't. Was it more than one? Was it more than two? It was quite a few. I was pretty tired. I was busy. We were going call to call that day. And this call was just one of the many. He's trying to lock this guy down to know how many calls did you go? Do you remember those calls? Were they significant? So you can't claim that you weren't paying attention, that you were tired, and that's why you didn't stop this guy, etc. So all these questions kind of have a backdoor meaning, which is why you should never talk to the cops, because a lot of people don't understand where they're going. This guy seems like a friendly, nice guy. This guy is not interviewing this guy to help him. Okay? That's not his job. When I interview people, I want to get incriminating evidence. I want you to slip up. I want to get somewhere to where I know that you're lying. I want to get to what I already think I know. They charge this guy with freaking murder. I mean, they're not his friend. The only reason his attorney allowed for him to give this thing is because he knows my guy's innocent. We got nothing to hide, and I don't think he can say anything that could hurt him any damn way.
And then, as far as designating tasks when you're with a partner, who was driving at the time you guys went to 38th in Chicago?
I was driving.
Okay, and so what's your role as the driver? Is there a designated role that the driver has versus the passenger?
Generally, it's and for me and Derek was the driver, so you're pretty much the chauffeur.
Okay.
And he's a report officer, contact officer on the back, just pretty much back.
Okay, so what he's talking about there is, I've talked about this before, contact cover. It's a concept that most agencies practice. When you have two officers on scene, one person is the contact officer. That's his call. That's his responsibility. He's going to take the paper. He decides who gets charged. He decides if they're going to book. He decides if they're going to let him go. He makes all the decisions. The cover officer merely watches the guy's back to make sure he doesn't get ambushed. And if it goes sideways, he's there to help the contact officer. The contact or primary officer is the officer in charge of the call. That's critical in cop work because you don't want to go out there as a non-contact. There ain't nothing get you ass chewed quicker than if I'm contact officer, I'm talking to a dude, and I start going somewhere else because I think he's got a bigger fish to fly, and I'm about ready to let him go, and then you come over and start jacking him up, saying, you know what? You're already freaking in it. I'm tired of listening to you. Put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest. Man, I'd be freaking pissed if I was contact. What the hell are you doing? It's my motherfucking call. I'll decide if he goes to jail. Just freaking cover me. So there is a strict code of you don't jump someone's call. And this cop doesn't really explain it well because he gets into it here in a minute. But there is a strict rule when you're responding. Whoever the primary, whoever the paper taker is, it's his call. He makes the decisions. All you do is back him up and stop him from getting hurt. That's it. That's your job. Now, your job should always be, if he gets out of hand or he starts doing something illegally, then you should stop him. But we know that ain't going to happen.
Okay. And do you do that for the whole shift, or do you switch roles?
Rotate mid-shift.
Mid-shift. Okay.
So the cop goes, do you do that for the host or do you switch? The cop knows they switch. Obviously, he wouldn't ask that question. I didn't know they switched. I wouldn't ask that question. He knows they switch, and that's why I ask him. Again, get him to drop his guard. Get him to say, this is a good guy. He's just asking me nice, easy softball questions.
So you hadn't changed those roles yet?
No.
At this time. Okay. All right. When you guys were responding to the call, what information did you have?
We were at the station at the time.
Okay.
And I heard 320 kind of call for a backup, and it sounded like it was urgent just by his voice.
Mm-hmm.
So I went out, and Derek went out as well, and we went into the squad car. And then I guess he was reading remarks as we were en route.
What did you know about the call that they were on?
I should probably, I guess, backtrack a little
Sure.
bit. We were initially dispatched to this call first, out of sector, because we were the only one available. And then.
So when you're dispatched out of sector, usually you're assigned a beat or an area of responsibility or a sector. And so any calls or anything that happens in that sector is your responsibility. Now, if you get tied up with a rape for several hours or a robbery or something, they're going to have to pull officers from other beats to help out in your calls. So when he says I got dispatched out of sector, that means it wasn't his beat. He was originally dispatched out of sector, meaning he was going to go cover someone else's call because they were busy or because something else, or there was no other officer available, etc.
320 cleared their call and canceled us, so and took their call in their sector.
Okay, and this happens a lot. Okay, I'm on a traffic stop and I'm searching a parolee and I'm saying, show me out, searching his car. So as I'm searching his car and I got the guy pinned down and my partner's watching him while he's sitting on the curb with his feet crossed, handcuffed after I've been patted down for no weapons. Now I'm searching his car and all of a sudden I hear a call of a rape come out. And because there's such things called beat integrity and beat responsibility, I don't want someone else taking my calls, and I don't want to shug my calls off on them and go, oh, I'm busy. Like a lot of female officers will do. As soon as a call comes out and it looks like they're going to get dispatched to like a rape or something that's going to require a lot of work, they'll say, oh, I was just about to make a traffic stop, and they'll pull somebody over. That means they're tied up, and then they dispatch someone else. Well, whoever's dispatched becomes primary, and they take the paper. It happens a lot with females. It happens a lot with older cops. We call them road, retired on active duty. They don't want to take paper. They're just putting in their time till they can retire. So they shuck and jive and dodge every damn paper call there is, and they come up with preempt me. I'm on a traffic stop. This guy just ran a red light in front of me or something. And then they'll make some BS traffic stop, stay there for 10, 15 minutes, write a BS ticket, so they know because it's a priority call, someone else will get dispatched, and they'll have to take the paper. Good sergeant will nip that in the butt. Some of them don't. So anyway, these guys cleared their call and canceled them and said, hey, you guys are coming out of beat. This is our beat. We cleared our other call. We'll take it. It's our call. Probably looking back, I bet you Siobhan or whatever his name is that's in jail for murder, he probably wished he would have let these guys take the call. But hindsight's 20/20.
So I heard remarks that it was a forgery in progress.
Okay. All right. And then before we get into kind of the story about what happened, Squad 320. Tell us about those officers. What do you know about them, or have you worked with them?
Very new. I believe Officer King was just 2 days off FTO. And Officer...
It says FTO. It's FTO, Field Training Officer, FTO.
Wayne was about a week just off FTO as well.
Okay. So, in your experience, is that pretty common to have two kind of rookie cops ride together?
I would say yes.
Did you experience that when you were a rookie cop?
No, because I was assigned to a day watch shift, so there were a bunch of old people there.
The old guy with no hair laughs. Because in most departments, in order to get day shift, you got to have seniority. So usually day shift is filled with the lazy guys that want their nights off, they want a regular schedule, and they don't want to fight and chase and deal with the crime that happens at night. Young guys like to work nights because that's when all the action is. So usually day shift is filled with women and a bunch of old timers.
So,
so you were by yourself, probably?
I was a young buck working with the older
Gotcha. Okay.
officers.
All right. Well, thanks for answering all those questions, Officer Tao. I guess what we'd like to...
I also want to look at this guy's demeanor. He seems pretty relaxed. He talks not like he's making it up. He doesn't seem real sharp, like he's on it and he's got good answers. He's got to kind of fumble for the words a little bit, but he says some good words. So overall, this cop does a pretty good job. When he falls short, I'm going to tell you what would have been better for him to say. But here we go.
Kind of have you do now is just kind of tell us in your own words, from start to finish, what happened. And then at the end, we'll likely just need to clarify some things if it's okay. But for now, we'd just kind of like to hear from you what you remember about this call and what happened.
Okay, this is what's called an open-ended question. This cop here is like, dude, I'm going to give you all the room in the world to change yourself. I don't want you to say that I led you or that I interrupted you or whatever. And commonly, this is a common tactic when anytime you're taking a statement from even a witness statement. Hey, man, in your own words, just go ahead and tell me what happened, what you saw. And then they do it all out, and you write down your questions that they're leaving out or things that you want them to clarify better. You know, they'll say, yeah, then the guy hit her, and then the girl fell, and then the ambulance came. Well, you're going to ask, well, what did the guy hit her with? What did the guy look like? What was he wearing? So you're going to follow up with all those questions, but you just let them tell their story first. That's kind of what he's doing.
So we're at the station, about to eat lunch. 320 ends up asking for a backup. It sounded like it was something urgent, like they were struggling with somebody. So,
okay, that's key. It sounds like it was something urgent. They were struggling. Now, I would want him to clarify more. I would make a note right now. Clarify what sounds like struggling and why you thought it was urgent. But he's going to let him tell a story. But this cop could have went, well, when he came across the area, I could tell he was out of breath, and it appeared like he was grabbing a radio and kind of cutting off short, and I heard screaming in the background as if he was in a fight, and I thought I heard another officer yelling commands, and I thought I heard somebody yelling like they were resisting. So to me, they were either in a fight, about to get in a fight, or they were dealing with a highly uncooperative person. That would have sounded better, but I'm not telling him to make shit up. I'm just saying if that's what he heard, that's the way he should have articulated it.
Being that I believe we're the only squad left available by default, we went to little system. I drove us about halfway there, and 320 had called code 4, which said they're okay. Dispatch.
Okay, it says code 4, F-O-R. It's code 4, okay, like the number 4, and that means no further assistance, we're good to go. So when somebody goes code 4, that means we're good. We don't need backup. We got it under control.
Canceled us, but knowing the area, and they're so new too, knowing the area, it's the cut food specialty, that specific store is a known blood gang hangout.
Okay, this is a really key point that nobody's ever mentioned. And I say it a lot. When you're working in a ghetto, gang, the hood, whatever you want to call it, knowing your area is a high crime area means it dictates how you respond to things, whether you're going to go back up with you or not. This guy just said, knowing that liquor, it was a known blood gang hangout. So that means that there's probably a lot of robberies, a lot of shootings, a lot of fights, a lot of disturbances, a lot of drugs being sold. So this guy knew this when he went there. So now in his state of mind, and this all goes to what he knew, totality of circumstances, he has an officer calling, it sounds urgent, that requesting backup to a known gang area and a high crime area. That's important to his state of mind.
Especially hostile to police. So no, this is
especially hostile to police, meaning any hood, ghetto, gang area, they don't like the cops because they know they get arrested, they get chased, they get ID'd, etc. So of course they're hostile to police. People who commit crimes are hostile to police. Antifa is hostile to the police. BLM is hostile to the police. People who commit crimes are hostile to police.
Those two there, especially very new. I decided to continue, at least to give scene security.
I bet he wish he didn't. Because the guy, it sounds like somebody called him off, said don't worry about it, and he decided to go anyway. Another thing in hindsight that he probably wish he wouldn't have done.
For them to finish whatever call they were doing. So we continued on to go assist. Once we come in westbound from 38th, I see right at the intersection, I see parked officer chain with two, with I believe male and female there. It looked like they were being detained, being that he was outnumbered.
Key point. He shows up and the officer's outnumbered. And outnumbered doesn't necessarily mean who he's dealing with. Outnumbered means a hostile crowd, gang members who are usually armed, who are hostile to police in a high crime area. A crowd starts gathering. Next thing you know, they're yelling, they're throwing things, etc. So that's, again, to his state of mind when he got there, why he did what he did.
I pulled off to the left side to back him up. He waved us off, kind of pointing to the other side of the intersection. Meaning maybe he's wanting us to go to the other side of the intersection. So I ended up getting out of that, driving towards squad 320. As we get out, I could immediately kind of hear a guy yelling, a citizen yelling, saying something similar to, "Hey, just do what they say," just similar to that. You're not going to win. Basically, trying to reason with a guy as I approach.
Okay, that's good that he heard that and that he got this out, because again, his state of mind. When you get out and you have other people telling the suspect, Floyd, the criminal under the influence committing crime, when you have other people telling him to calm down and stop resisting, it goes to a state of mind that he's obviously resisting. I'm in a high crime area. The cop had to call for backup. Now I see him fighting with the guy, and I hear the crowd telling the guy, stop resisting. In his state of mind, it's reasonable that Floyd was resisting and not cooperating from what he saw and from what he heard.
The squad, the door's open. The rear driver door's open. I see Officer King trying to get the officer later to be Floyd. At that time, we didn't know his identity, but and Floyd resisted and refused to voluntarily sit in the squad car.
Okay, when anytime a cop uses the word resisting, you need to articulate and expand on that. How was he resisting? How do you know he was resisting? Is he resisting because he didn't bend down fast enough for the officer? Or is he resisting because he's actively fighting, he's stiffening up, he's pulling away, he's refusing, he's telling him no, etc.? So you want to describe why he was resisting.
As Officer King was ordering him to sit in there, I could see that Floyd was stiffening up his body in a way to kind of prevent Officer King to kind of insert him in there. Floyd's kind of a bigger.
I saw Floyd actively resisting and trying to stop the officer from getting in the car. He did that by stiffening his body, arching his back, and refusing to let anyone help him in the car. Sounds better. Maybe. Somebody will be here. You don't need to say that. Shut up, freaking crybabies. Why are you here listening if you don't want to cry?
Guy, so he's bigger than all of us.
Great point. He's bigger than all of us. That's totality of circumstances. He's bigger. He's stronger. He's under the influence. People under the influence don't feel pain. People under the influence experience sometimes more strength because they don't feel pain. Therefore, they're harder to control. They sweat. Therefore, they're harder to get a hold of. All those things matter.
And he's yelling, saying he doesn't want to go into the squad car. And he's saying he's claustrophobic. From my understanding, he was sitting in the squad vehicle prior. So
that's a good point. That he's saying that. I think I brought that up in one of the other videos. He's sitting in a car when they catch him, and he's not claustrophobic. And as soon as they get in the car, he's claustrophobic, and he doesn't want to go in. Obviously, he's lying. It's a ploy. He doesn't want to get arrested. Probably had dope on him that he ended up eating, which ended up killing him. Oh, I'm sorry. The drugs and the autopsy's all wrong. That's not what killed him. All right, so here we go.
Officer King was trying to get him. They were able to kind of get his head in at some point. Officer Lane is on the other side of the squad. Opened the rear passenger door. Essentially, Officer King is trying to push as Lane is trying to pull him in. Because
okay, he could have explained this a little more. A common technique we use to get uncooperative suspects into the car is one person who's trying to get him in will get part of his body in the car. Another officer will go to the opposite side of the car where he can reach in and grab part of the body that's in and help pull the suspect in while the other officer is pushing. It paints a clearer picture. He doesn't really paint the picture, but, I mean, I'm not cracking on a guy. I'm just saying if you're testifying or something, it makes a difference when you can articulate it to a jury or to a cop or on video that's going to be played later. You paint a clear picture. You need to paint pictures with words and be articulate as a cop. That's why you got to write long reports. The cops that write short reports with short sentences. There was this one lieutenant, piece of shit, Nelaboff was his name at YOLO, and he would write like 3-sentence warrants. I mean, it would be 3 sentences. His whole warrant would be 3 sentences because he knew the judge, and he'd only take it to one judge, and his judge signed all his warrants. And it used to drive me nuts. I thought it was chicken shit. But he was a chicken shit anyway. But I digress. Be articulate. Some people will call you long-winded. Some people will say you're giving excess information. Some people will say it's not needed. You know what? You need to paint a picture so when someone listens and understands that's not part of the culture, that's not an attorney, that's not a cop, they understand. I mean, I'm even talking to people now. I talk to my nephew sometimes. He's in the Army, and he uses all these Army terms, and ANG, and this and that, and AR, and he starts using, and I go, dude, man, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're using Army lingo, and I'm not familiar with those terms. Oh, so he has to stop it, because he's used to talking to people that understand all his little alphabet police. Cops do that all the time. They use lingo that cops understand, that maybe DAs will understand, but a jury or common people will not understand.
Floyd is resisting and not following directions.
Floyd is actively resisting. He's screaming. He's physically strong. He's overpowering the officers. He's actually throwing the officers around, even though he's handcuffed, to where they can't even get a hold of him or get him in the car. Sounds better.
At some point, he's able to get his body inside, but ends up flinging himself out of the door where Lane was.
So he says he flung himself out. What he's really describing is, as we got Floyd partly into the car, he was still actively resisting, kicking, and pushing. And he either got his foot on the door well or something and was able to push off, which shot him across the seat and out the other side of the car. So now he was out of the car again because of his active resistance trying to avoid getting into the car. Sounds better. Paints a better picture.
Was trying to pull him in which is the rear driver, or excuse me, rear passenger door. So he flings himself out.
He flings himself out. Who knows what that means? He flings himself out. Somebody can probably fill in. Some people will say, I kind of know what he means. You don't want people guessing, because there'll be some people that'll be like, what does he mean he flings himself out? I mean, what? I fling a booger off my finger. Is that what he means, flinging? Well, I don't understand what he's talking about, flings himself out. You don't want to use terms and make things unclear.
Officer King goes around and tries to kind of...
Oh, I'm at 30 minutes. I'm going to make a part 2. This will probably be, let's see, we're at 32 minutes. I don't know. I'm going to do 30-minute series, so if people want to watch them later, you can watch part 1, part 2, etc. All right, so this is part 1, going to part 2.